In the canteen, the lunch lady slipped me a note that said, "Don't eat any of the food." Nico was the new kid. He was quiet and subdued, often with his nose in a book. He was one of the smartest kids in the school, but because of his small size and quiet nature, it made him an easy target for bullies. The poor kid had every allergy known to man, but his worst allergy was strawberries and nuts, so he was always asking the lunch ladies if the food contained strawberries or nuts. I could tell they were starting to get annoyed with his questions, and because their attitudes towards him were getting worse, I decided to watch them more closely. There was one lunch lady though, Mrs. Patton, who was always kind to Nico. She was the only one who never rolled her eyes when he asked about ingredients, and I noticed the other lunch ladies had started freezing her out of their conversations. Things started off with them giving him water that they had put a little strawberry juice in as flavor. He ended up breaking into hives and having trouble breathing. Luckily, the nurse had his EpiPen and saved his life. I couldn't prove they did it with intent to harm him though. They acted so surprised when the police investigated the intent behind the water, so I continued watching them. The day after the water incident, Mrs. Patton found me in the hallway between classes. She looked nervous and kept glancing over her shoulder. "Just keep an eye on him," she whispered. "Please." Then she walked away before I could ask what she meant. Then one day, after school, I was walking through the cafeteria to get to my locker, and the lunch ladies were behind the buffet counter, speaking to each other in low tones. But then I noticed that a few school bullies were with them, nodding their heads as the lunch ladies talked to them. That made my blood run cold, so I ducked in front of the buffet table and strained my ears to listen into their conversation. "What if someone catches us?" asked one of the kids. I pulled out my phone to record the conversation. One of the lunch ladies snorted. "No one is going to catch us," she snapped. "Not if you do things exactly as I say. Nico will never know what hit him, but there is no way he has all those allergies, and he keeps saying he's allergic to nuts. We haven't tested him on that yet. So tomorrow, during lunch, I will give him a sandwich that has peanuts in it. The poor kid is going to regret lying about his allergies for attention." They laughed together, and then I heard some shuffling. They were getting ready to leave. I backed away slowly and escaped out of the side door. I didn't stop running until I was safely at home. Then I burst through the front door and yelled for my parents. Dad was working in his office, but Mom was baking cookies in the kitchen. I ran into the kitchen and grabbed her shoulders, explaining what I just heard. My mom listened to me with wide, concerned eyes, until she finally sighed and her shoulders sagged in defeat. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped. "That's a serious accusation, the kind that can ruin someone's career and life. Why would you try to ruin someone like that?" "Because it's true," I screeched. Then I pulled out my phone and played the recording for her. She instantly paled and her eyes widened. "We need to call the police," she said sharply. I sat at the kitchen table while my mom talked to the cops and presented them with the evidence. Finally, the cops left and I couldn't sleep that night because I was terrified of what was going to happen. The next day, I went to school like normal. When I got to the school, nothing looked out of place. The lunch ladies were still there, bustling around in the cafeteria. There were no cops. The teachers didn't look panicked or scared. Everything was normal, and that just made me more nervous. Things continued on as normal throughout the morning. Then we got to lunch and I headed to the cafeteria. As I walked through the line, Mrs. Patton caught my eye. She looked pale and her hands were shaking. She slid my tray toward me and I felt something underneath it. I glanced down and saw a small folded note pressed against the bottom of my plate. I palmed it and sat down at my table. Under the table, I unfolded it. In shaky handwriting, it read, "Don't eat any of the food. Don't let him eat it either." They didn't just do his plate. My stomach dropped. They had put peanuts in more than just Nico's sandwich. They wanted it to look like a kitchen-wide accident, not a targeted attack. I sat down at my usual table and watched as Nico went up to the lunch ladies and requested his usual lunch. The lunch ladies swore up and down that there were no nuts or strawberries in it, and Nico happily went to his table. I stood up to warn him, but one of the bullies from the cafeteria meeting stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Where are you going?" he asked with a smirk. By the time I shoved past him, it was too late. My hands shook as I watched him pull out the sandwich and eat it. No one tried to stop him. I held my breath, and for a second, nothing happened. Then he started to seize, and he collapsed on the floor. I screamed and leaped to my feet. Suddenly, the cafeteria doors burst open and cops spilled into the room, arresting the lunch ladies immediately. The school nurse hurried over and jabbed the EpiPen into Nico's thigh. A moment later, his body went still and he relaxed. I watched the paramedics roll Nico out of the cafeteria, and the cops dragged the lunch ladies out as well. Mrs. Patton stood behind the counter with tears streaming down her face. She hadn't been arrested. She was the one who had called the police that morning and told them everything. She'd known about the plan for days, but had been too scared to speak up until she realized they were going to contaminate all the food so no one could trace it back to a single plate. And I was pissed, because I realized the cops didn't come to the rescue until after they had real proof. They needed Nico to have a reaction in order to arrest the lunch ladies for attempted murder. But without Mrs. Patton's note, I would have eaten that food too. And without her call, the cops wouldn't have been waiting outside those doors at all.